Happy Wednesday. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. I don't know where you are in the world because you might not have told me. So drop it in here. Let us know where you're coming from. Welcome back to everybody who comes every single week. I see you. I appreciate you. Jesse, I know Jenna has a meeting. Raul, Ryan, Jeff, so good to see you guys. And welcome to anyone who's new. Yay, I promise we are a really fun group and this is a really fun space, so don't be shy. Put in a little hello, let us know where you're coming in from, what's in your cup. If it is not caffeine, that's okay. We don't judge here. If it's wine, that's fine. We'll just have to see how that goes today. But thank you so much for being here. If you're new here, normally every single week we have a guest, we have an entrepreneur, we have an expert, we have a CEO, we have somebody amazing and wonderful that I can't wait for you to meet. And today we do have a special guest, but before that, it's just gonna be you and me catching up, doing a little Ask Me Anything because I wanted to check in with you and see how you were doing and how I could help. We've had some fantastic guests here the last few weeks. I mean, really powerhouse guests. We've had Dave Crenshaw, we had Mitch Matthews, we had Jake Dunlap, Michaela Alexis, and Jenna Viviano. They talked about all sorts of different topics, everything from sales to getting hired to productivity to how to leverage LinkedIn. And Mitch Matthews, I think, hit a home run last week with just dreaming bigger and how we can live out our big dreams in 2021. So I'm curious, from your standpoint, who did you really resonate with? Or who is someone that for you, just sort of like in the shower and the next day, you were thinking about their message, or you were maybe thinking about an aha moment that they had brought to you? I know, Jeff, you named everybody. So if you had to narrow it down, and I'm asking for two reasons. I'm asking, number one, because selfishly, it helped guides me to continue to curate and continue to bring amazing people into the group. So that's number one, curation, on you giving me feedback on who you're loving so that I can step in and make sure we're curating good people. And number two, I'm not gonna lie, most of the guests ask me for feedback. I think, I don't want to say like, we're all wanting to know what other people think, but you kind of want to know, like, how'd I do? How did that go? How did how did people think? Did they resonate? Did they get the message? So I'm also asking on behalf of them, what did you think? Who really stood out to you? What content really sparked? Was it the sales? Was it the dreaming? Was it the productivity? What was really like, oh, that person got me? Yes, Mitch was phenomenal. I feel like he was just one nugget after another. Obviously, his wildly successful podcast, Dream, Think, Do, means that he is pretty much a pro expert at exactly what you said, Kelly, hitting those home runs out of the park every single time. So I feel like he sort of had an unfair advantage in that. But I'm so happy that he and his message resonated with you. Tim, I love Jason. I love Jim. Maybe we'll bring them back. I feel like everything, especially Jason. Jason, if you guys haven't checked him out, Jason Pfeiffer is the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur. He's a dear friend, and he has some really exciting things happening. He just debuted a new website a couple days ago. He has a new book that's launching next year that's top secret. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say. I don't want to get in trouble, but it's really exciting. And so maybe we'll have to bring Jason back because I feel like he has a lot of updates in what's going on with his life. But that is amazing, Tim. Thank you. This is exactly the type of stuff that I was hoping to get. So thank you. And Dan, it's your first time. Welcome. As I said, we're a super fun group here. So definitely say hello to other people. We're all just a great group of interesting, smart, wonderful humans who get together here every single week at 1 p.m. Eastern. And then I thought I would update you on a little bit of what I have going on. If you follow me here on LinkedIn or maybe over on Instagram, you'll see that I have announced a beta program. I know it's sort of crazy. Starting in 2019, I launched a bunch of courses with LinkedIn in a brilliant partnership. And there's pros and cons to doing recorded content. The pro is I can access anyone, anywhere, and they can access me anywhere in the world, regardless of time zone, because the courses are all taken by yourself with you and a computer, and that's pretty awesome. But I feel like one of the cons is I love this. I love interacting. I love when we're all learning from each other, because I think there's a special magic sauce that just can't be recreated in a recorded course. So that's why I was super eager and excited to launch some form of that. How do we continue to learn together, and how can I teach you in an active way all of the lessons that I've learned about self-branding and about working with a lot of the A-list artists and talent that I've worked with. I'm kind of like, here, come copy my homework. I've done all this work and I want to share it with you. So I was really happy and super thankful for, Kelly and Jeff and and Rachel and a bunch of people in the group that continue to keep me accountable, which is why we're here every single week with this beta launch. So we'll drop it here in the chat, but really excited about that launch. I'm just looking forward to it. I think it's going to be super cool. It's actually part of a beta program that is going on with a company called maven.com, if you haven't checked it out. It's run by two co-founders, Wes and Goggin. Goggin founded Udemy. Yeah, that slightly successful company. I think it was valued at 600 million or something last time I checked. And Wes is a brilliant marketer who is responsible for co-founding the Alt MBA with Seth Godin. So really cool things happening there. But I am hoping that I get picked to be part of their beta program to launch my beta program. I know it sort of feels like the Matrix, like, you're in the movie, which is a movie. So I'm starting a beta to get in a beta. I know it sounds totally crazy, but before we get to our special guest, I was hoping that we could do a quick little session with each other of sort of the latest and greatest. I hope we could do like a swap where I tell you kind of the latest and greatest things that I've been learning, listening to, watching, and then you could tell me the latest and greatest things that you have been listening to, watching, and learning. Sound like a plan? Drop a yes. Drop a yes in the chat if that sounds like a plan to you, because I can't just share all the latest and greatest if you're not down with that. So, hey, Daniel, it has been a while. I'm so happy you're here. Sending you a big cheers I'm in Austin, Texas, by the way. I didn't even write that in my chat, so shame on me. And Dan, by the way, I love this suggestion of Jesse. I will reach out to Jesse. I'm gonna write that down right now to reach out to Jesse and see if he will come on with us, because you're right, Jesse's freaking awesome and I would love to have him on. So, okay. Tim, Daniel, Jeff, Richard, let's do this. It's time to swap the latest and the greatest. So, number one swap for me is I'm going to swap a podcast. I am going to swap a book. I am going to swap a resource. Those are the three things that I'm swapping with you. So if you could start thinking of a podcast, a book, or a resource that you could swap back with me and all of us, that would be awesome. So a podcast that I listened to recently that I have just been can't stop thinking about, constantly been in my mind. It's a podcast called Creative Elements, but there's a specific episode on Creative Elements that I cannot get out of my mind. And it is all about feedback loops. I'm gonna say that again. It's all about feedback loops. And the podcast basically dives into the fact that before you do anything, it's helpful to have a feedback loop. And exactly kind of what I did earlier, constantly getting feedback, constantly iterating. And the podcast, I'll drop the link in the chat. It's with this brilliant guy named Dickie Bush. And he talks about how as he grows his business and as he starts his business, he doesn't look for macro changes. He instead implements tons and tons and tons of feedback loops constantly and instead iterates on the business, which I thought was really unique and interesting because as we experience life normally, we're normally used to bigger feedback loops. What does that mean? What's an example of that? An example of that would be you're staying at a hotel and you check in on a Thursday and you're going to stay for the weekend and you check out on Sunday. So you check in on Thursday, you stay the weekend, have fun, all good. Get home maybe Monday or Tuesday, that hotel sends you an email saying, what did you think of this day? Well, if you had something bad to say, like the pillows were too soft or the room was too bright in the morning, there's nothing that the hotel can really do anymore to fix that. You're already at home. And so the podcast episode instead talks about these small feedback loops that if they were able to survey you, while you're still there, there's a chance for them to fix that. They can send up firmer pillows or they can switch your room. So it talks about really instead thinking about business in terms of minor micro feedback loops instead of larger ones. So that one to me was just, I've been kind of constantly thinking about it and constantly figuring out what does that mean in practice? How can I do that in real time? Is it polls on LinkedIn? Is it polls on Instagram story? Is it just asking for feedback like I kind of just did? That's sort of my swap from me to you. I feel like that podcast episode was so strong. And Tim, I love this recommendation swap right back, build for tomorrow with Jason Pfeiffer. I'm curious if there's a specific episode that Jason has done recently that sort of really resonated with you and really has kind of come back to you like, that episode, I just can't get it out of my mind. It's so good. If there is one, let me know because, it's always just good to hear, what you're resonating with and what you're doing. So if there is a podcast that you've listened to recently that you're just like, yes, either the specific episode or maybe like Tim said, an entire string, let me know. I learn from you as much as you learn from me, and we learn from all of our guests. So again, we're all learning together. We're all kind of figuring out what works together. I love this suggestion, Ramalytics. I'm definitely saying that wrong. I'm definitely mispronouncing that, but it looks amazing. And also Frito-Lay, I'm sure there's tons to learn there, especially from a chief commercial officer. So amazing recommendation. Thank you so much. Steve Burlett, yes, I've heard of this one, Diary of a CEO. Okay, I haven't actually listened to this podcast yet, but you have not been the first person, Dan, that told me that it was amazing. Chef's kiss. So is there a specific episode I should start with? So I can't start with all of them. So is there one that you would recommend as like a sort of gateway point that I should start with? Because that would be super duper helpful. How I Built This with Guy, also an amazing podcast. Love that. Let me know, Jeff, what episode lately you've been loving. I actually kind of unsubscribed. I know it's terrible. It was just like too much. After a while, I had to kind of like trim down. So, but if there is an episode that you're really obsessed with, I will add it to the list, of course. And then I love this question, what's my type of posts on LinkedIn? We said, ask me questions, pepper them throughout the show, or throughout the meeting. My favorite types of posts on LinkedIn, personally for me, are either text-only posts or, I know this is a leading question, carousel posts. I think they're super fun. I also have been really liking the polls. I know that the polls are also getting a lot of favor in the algorithm right now. The algorithm is loving polls. So if you haven't posted a poll lately, I encourage you to post a poll because the algorithm is super favoring them right now. Okay, love all these podcast episodes. These are great. Jean, thank you. Secrets of a Wealthy Woman. Gonna have to add that to the list because that sounds pretty amazing. So number 2, I promised you a book. I just got done yesterday reading a pretty cool book called Obsessed by Emily Hayward. She is one of the founders of Red Antler, which is a wildly successful branding firm that really set the tone for a lot of brands that have now become billion-dollar unicorn companies. Brands like Warby Parker, brands like Sweetgreen, the salad shop, brands like Allbirds, the tennis shoes. Her and her company were really the sort of ground floor brand builders in that group. So it was a book that was recommended to me by a friend. So I scooped it up on Audible and finished it pretty short. I want to say it's like 5 hours. So you can definitely get through it like in a couple days. Really easy listen if you're washing the dishes or going for a run. It's not really something where you have to take notes. So an Audible version is totally good to read, but it is called Obsessed. We'll drop the link in the chat, but really, really enjoyed that book. I thought it was, well, I'll drop Emily's information. That way you can check out her and her website and the book in general. But that was a really good one. If you're into brand building and you're into marketing and you're curious about how really famous brands are getting built from the ground floor, I think you would love that book. And I'm curious, Giacomo, what's your favorite book? I feel like he gives the best book. We always in the Instagram DMs have a really good book sharing rapport. So I'm curious what you've been reading because I'm sure it's very good and I would love to share that with everybody else. But I should also add, yes, if you use Instagram, follow me on Instagram, shoot me a DM. I'm always kind of DMing back and forth. If you don't have Instagram, no worries. We can keep it on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn and you can always shoot me a message about what you're working on or what you think is really great. Tim, I loved this book. I love James Clear. I read this book probably when it first came out, which I think was like a year ago now. It's probably worth it for me to reread, but I would also suggest if you have not subscribed to his newsletter, he has a newsletter called 3-2-1, and I really enjoy it because I feel like if you love the book, chances are you will also love the newsletter. So thank you for that book recommendation. But if anybody else has any book recommendations, whether it's Audible or, in real life books that you've been reading recently, let me know, let us know, because chances are if you're liking it, I'm gonna like it too. Never Split the Difference. Also read this one, Charlie. You guys, is it surprising that we've all read the same books? No, because if you're here, it means you're smart, you love bettering yourself, you love seeing and talking to interesting humans and with interesting humans. So I also love that book. Super amazing. If you haven't read Never Split the Difference already, highly, highly, highly recommend. Kelly, I did not read this book, although this has also been recommended to me. Haven't read this one yet, hasn't made the list, but I definitely probably need to give this a read because I feel like it's one of those things that if you keep hearing it over and over, you have to just be like, okay, I gotta read that book because multiple people keep talking about it. So it's probably pretty good. So that is a great book recommendation too. Okay, number 3, I told you that I would share a resource that I have been loving because if I'm loving it, there's a good chance you are loving it. This resource is honestly kind of one of my favorite things I've found recently. It is a template to saying no. For any of my fellow people pleasers out there, saying no is really hard when you have to say no to something, either in a text message or in an email. You're one of those people that like you draft it a bunch of times and then you delete a sentence because you don't like how it sounds. Then you try to draft it again. And then before you know it, you're like, oh my gosh, saying no in this email has taken me 10 minutes. This is a brilliant resource because it actually has templates that you can edit and borrow. You know how much I love copying homework, that you can borrow and steal from. It's an amazing Gmail plugin. I actually don't even know the name of the plugin. I think it's just called like how to say no. And like it's a plugin and it's templates. It is been such a lifesaver for me because it has allowed me to say no, to protect my time and my energy and the things that I'm doing, because I can't get my big goals accomplished if I don't make time for them. And I make time for them by saying no to other stuff. Just like you can't accomplish your big goals unless you say no to the smaller things or sometimes the big things. But I know saying no can be hard, and I know that I'm not alone in really struggling with how to do it in a gracious and polite way. So I would say if you haven't installed this Gmail plugin, or if you don't even use Gmail, that's fine. Maybe it's just a copy paste for you to keep in a Word document somewhere. So as you're thinking about saying no, holy moly, it is really going to save you. So drop a link here about how to say no in like the best, most possible, loving way ever. So you have a resource like that you've been using. I would just love to hear it and love any feedback. By the way, I love that Dan just wrote in all caps, a newsletter is great. Yes, it really is. It is that good. Which also brings me to, Dan, I don't know if you subscribe to my newsletter. Shameless plug. But I have a newsletter. It's called What Works, and I do it every single Tuesday here on LinkedIn. So I would love, am I going to compete with James Clear? I don't know, maybe like a baby version, maybe like a junior version that will like one day get to James Clear level, but like I'm making my way there. So I would love, if you haven't already, I will include the link. It's super easy. You just click the link, you click the little button that subscribe, and you're done. That's it. So maybe, Dan, you can give me feedback on how my newsletter compares to James Clear. And then I could always get better and try to just be more like James Clear. I mean, aren't we all doing that? Yes, Jeff. I love to hear that. The newsletter, it's a labor of love, y'all. It takes some work. I try to pack a lot of good resources in that every single week. So if you don't already subscribe, give it a little. I think it's a plus sign or a like button. I don't actually know what the button. It's a blue button and it says subscribe. Maybe it doesn't even have a symbol next to it. I think it's a plus sign, but I don't know. But I would love to have you subscribe to that. That would be amazing. And so I also sort of hinted at a surprise guest, and I'm really excited about this guest, and I'm really excited about the surprise. And the surprise reason that he is here, because I think it is like a marketing genius 101 move. And I don't even know if he like devised it as like a most genius marketing plan, but that's what it was. So let me tell you a little story before I bring him on. But obviously you and me, we've been doing this on Wednesday every single week for, I think we're coming up to a year. I actually should check on that because we should have like a little party whenever the year is, but we've been doing this for a year. And this amazing man, his name is Ryan. joined 1 week and is like, wow, you seem to have such a great group, and you drink this coffee every week, and mine was tea, but yours is coffee, so it's just caffeine. That's like our general point. And he's like, I noticed that every single week you have a different mug. And I was like, yeah, I have a collection of mugs. It's so great. He's like, well, we should make a mug for this, like for your coffee. And I was like, oh, I love that idea. Like, that is such a genius idea. So smart, so brilliant, amazing. And he's like, let's dream this up. What could it look like? And so you guys, I say this every week, and that's why it's sort of funny. It's like a wink, wink, like tongue in cheek, there's a good chance there's not coffee in here. So I was like, this is hilarious, because I've been using it on my Zoom calls with people, and every time it comes on the screen, like, people crack up. They're like, oh my God, that's the most hilarious mug I've ever seen. Because yeah, it's like a very tongue-in-cheek thing of like, oh, maybe it's not caffeine. Because there have been times where a little Sancerre makes its way into here on a Friday at 4:00 before my last Zoom call. So I just like laughed hysterically. And so we had so much fun in the process that I was like, you know what? We have got to bring Ryan on here and just, say thank you, and just also just chat with him a little bit. So Ryan, welcome.
Thanks, everybody. I guess I should move around a little. Great. I love seeing the mug for the past 26 minutes on your call. I think this is the first time it's debuted.
I wanted to debut it with you. I mean, it's only fitting that it debuts with the man, the myth, the legend behind it.
I liked the lead up too, because that really put like the perspective of like, was this just random, or was it kind of like designed? And that's kind of our thing is, we take people's brands and put them on awesome products.
It was such a secret evil genius plan, because I have to say, two things happen, right? I get the mug. I use the mug because I think it's hilarious and cute, obviously. And number two, then obviously the next natural question is, where did you get the mug? Or how did you get the mug? And in which case, I literally will drop the link here. I'll just do it again. I say we got it at Radar Promotions from Ryan. Like awesome. That's so in a way, I work for you, Ryan. I'm a salesman.
Well, that's the big joke. We're all about customer evangelicals. And I don't know if the viewers or readers hear much about that term, but that, going back to the idea of people buy things from people as opposed to people buying things from companies. And so we're all about trying to make some sort of product with a really awesome brand where those two things kind of meld. And I think the lead up, I couldn't say it better myself. Like, there's such a cool message on that mug that is so invoking, humorous, like you mentioned, tongue in cheek. So that's what we do all day.
And I'm just so curious, like, when did you start doing this? When did like the genius hit you? And then I know that it's going to come up. How can people like get in touch with you, or like, how do you guys work? Because obviously, your secret evil genius plan worked on me.
Well, that's the hope. That always is the hope for all of our projects. In terms of evil genius, the other part that I'm super proud about that's been happening a lot. One of our main clients in the country is I don't know if I should say the name, but it's a large nonprofit with a lot of different branches, about 2,600 branches across the country. And because of this nonprofit's focus in the world, they've had a huge decrease in activity with all the shutdowns and COVID. So all the staff have been laid off, almost like 80 to 90%. And these people all just go elsewhere because everybody's got to work. And one of the best testimonials for me, that my introduction, and that's why I'm saying this, is these people that go to these other companies come back to me for promotional products. And that's one of the best testimonials. And that's where I go back to like the customer evangelicals. It's like, I don't care if you're at this nonprofit or that nonprofit, we'll take care of you. And I see Kelly's note on the personalized and fitting mug. Like, yeah, we got to make stuff fun, because the brand and the logo matter. But my background is actually, I was talking a little with Shelby about this. My background is IT, and I was working with a client who he was using me, or I was helping him, however you want to phrase it, with a lot of his back end like IC stuff, which was not his focus. He's gone to a large distributor of promotional products that also doubles by selling promotion office supplies, which is like a household name. So I won't blast them so much, but because of that, he had to divest from his company, and he was like, nobody knows my business like you. Do you want to come take over promotional products? And I'm like, sure. And it was actually a nice thing I was talking to Shelby about with her newborn, or 9-month-old, and kind of where I started is because this is when my son was born in 2014. And I was a stay-at-home dad for the first year. And I realized that like wrenching on people's computers, like, because I was like a hardware-focused type of person, like your computer breaks, you call me. And I was like, this is really hard to do with kids because it's like emergency work. It's like you're a 24/7 plumber. Like, how do you have a family with that type of schedule? And so the opportunity came up to basically take over this person's business, which I still rag on him about this, but his company name was literally his first name, last name, company. Like, and so I tell him, I was like, his name's Bob. And I said, Bob, everybody knows you're a one-man show when you have that name. He goes, tell that to Walt Disney. And I'm like, okay.
So fair point. But it's so true. I mean, he is on something in terms of exactly what you said earlier, and what Charlie so beautifully said here is that people buy from people, and really it's a people business. We're in a people business. I mean, you saw this need from me. I was like, yes, you're right. There's this need. I didn't even think of it. And then boom, like the magic happens. And it wasn't, and sometimes so much of that human connection and human need, it's in places that we can't even see. Really, like, you didn't see going from IT, into this world of promotional products, but like, here you are because the right people were put in front of you at the right time. That's why I love getting together like this every single Wednesday, because I just have this theory that when you get magical, smart people together, amazing things happen.
I think so too. And I don't think there's enough of this going on lately. I'm 36, so I'm right kind of in between whatever was before millennials and Gen Zs, and whatever the name before that was in terms of older people. And this is something that has been a common thread through my entire career. Like, my first sales job was door-to-door sales for the Daily News in Los Angeles. So like, I was the guy knocking on your door when I was 20 to get through college. And that sales job, you can't put enough value in like hearing no 99 out of 100 times, and the requirement to like self-start and really manage. And this is something in like the sales psyche thing that like people don't talk about much, is like managing your own emotions. Like, if you come off of a great sale, you want to go to the beach and have a margarita. Or if you have had a horrible month, you really get down in the dumps about it, and you need to be able to like manage your own brain out of that situation. And so that was what that sales job did. And then my degree is actually in entrepreneurship from Cal State Fullerton. That was like my focus. And so that literally was one of the most unique degrees in college I've ever heard of to this day. In terms of all the choices we have in degree options, when I tell this story, I always use UCLA, and I hope there's no UCLA graduates here, but UCLA has a major in Peruvian dance. And so I use that as like the spectrum. It's not like in accounting, there's this huge continuum of choices for your degree. So the entrepreneurship degree was like, you basically can take that information and apply it to any business. And so that gave me a leg up, I think, for IT and promotional products, where I can just like sit down and say, what are we selling today?
Well, yeah, and I feel like what's also great is hearing no and sort of like strengthening that resilience, strengthening that muscle of like, I heard no, but I'm gonna keep going. And also I think, you know, you really do have to sort of separate the no is to whatever it is, the product or service, whatever it is you're selling. It's not a no to you. It's not like, okay, you know, Ryan, you're a bad person, or okay, Kim, you know, I don't like your hair today. It's no, you know, that's service. It's just not what we need right now. Or no, like that product, it's just not the right time for us. And a lot of times you don't hear the second part, which is like, it's not the right time, or like, you know, maybe down the road. Instead, you just hear the no. And you're like, oh, is it me? Like, you know, what's happening here? And so I feel like that's, and Jeff just made a great point going back to your story earlier is, you know, Sarah Blakely, first self-made billionaire woman with Spanx, her first job was door-to-door sales. So I totally hear you on like entrepreneurship and getting those no's and sort of getting that sales rep in. I think it is sales is one of the hardest jobs, I think mentally to just stay tough.
I think especially it's direct sales, and I would kind of add that primer to it, because direct sales, you know, it's there's so much, there's like the wordsmithing aspect, because if anything you've asked, and this is like my salespersonship, I say salesmanship, but that's not like 2021 appropriate. My salespersonship is like, if you've asked a question that no is an appropriate response to, you didn't phrase the question correctly because that was a closed-ended question. And I come from the classic, I don't want, this might make me sound more aggressive of a salesperson than I am, but I come from the classic point of view where no is simply a request for more information. And that might offend some people. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but you know,
I haven't. I usually do the like, no is not a no, it's just a not right now.
And that
Similar.
puts it, and I don't want to say I kind of have a marginal dislike for points of view that put the customer in the driver's seat of the sales process. And so that the way that's phrased leads me to believe like I can't control that sales process because it's their timeline, and that might rub some people the wrong way. I'd love to hear from the guests on, you know, what their thoughts are. But it goes back to like the idea of a pipeline and managing the pipeline. And you're right, like not every phone call or email or whatever process you do is going to result in a sale. But I think the follow-up was where closed sales happen. And that's salespeople from a mental, like a brain psychology perspective, are typically horrible at follow-ups, because if you're doing it right, you're like the hunter killer of the business world. Like that's literally what a salesperson is to me. And it's like, oh, that's not an easy kill. My brain veers off to some other project.
Well, and I think Richard just made a really great point that sales has especially been hard during COVID, when so much of sales is in person, or you're going to conferences or trade shows, and you know, just trying to do sales in what can, I mean, probably be described as like a once in a lifetime. You know, I hope it's once in a lifetime. I hope we're not living through these pandemics every decade. I can't handle it. But it's been an extraordinarily hard time for sales in this moment as well. What's something that has sort of been your North Star, or your like guiding light on the days where you're just like, oh, like this is so hard?
Well, in terms of my North Star, 2020 for me, as your guests and you guys can all imagine, promotional products wasn't the best place to be for the past year. And so the numbers I've been hearing industry wide are that promo was down 40 to 60% last year. And that number is I think safely averaged. It sounds better than I think the real situation was, because you basically had two types of distributors, or you know, the people that your guests would talk to, like me. You have the distributors who pivoted to what your customers were asking for, and the distributors who didn't, who said, We sell t-shirts, mugs, and pens. You don't have any conventions or conferences that you need mugs, t-shirts, and pens for. Therefore, we don't have anything for you. As opposed to me, who was looking because this is how I feed my kids. And so for me, I'm looking at like, what do your nonprofits and your branches need right now? And they all say, we've pivoted to childcare because that's a permissible activity that makes us money reasonably. We need masks, face shields, and like individual use items like crayons for my preschool. But I don't need one box of crayons with my logo on it. I need 250 because each kid, at least in California, the children have to have their own stuff. So every kid gets a pen, every kid gets a box of crayons, and it's not like a shared thing anymore. So we pivoted in terms of our company, and we stayed flat for 2020. I didn't realize what an accomplishment that was until February or March of this year, so like a month or two ago, when I actually looked at my 2020 numbers for taxes. Because and for the direct salespeople, that won't be surprising because I don't look at my numbers on a daily, weekly, or even monthly basis. Because if I'm like that has the ability to infect your like psyche, whether you're up or down. And so I'm just spinning my wheels as hard as I can. Oh, you need like bandanas? Like I've never sold a disposable mask in my entire career, but here we are selling 1,000 of them with a logo. And it's like,
yeah, I mean,
whatever.
It's such an accomplishment, and kudos to you for sort of driving that bar to even just stay the same as you were in 2019. I mean, speaking for myself, Abby and I, with our company, Bright Ideas Only, our marketing agency, as most everybody here knows, we mainly work in entertainment. We mainly work with music artists. We mainly work with festivals. We mainly work with sports teams. We mainly work with large conventions like Comic-Con. I don't have to tell you that all of that went to poop
Right.
in 2020 and for the beginning of 2021, and we're just now slowly starting to see it come back. So, I mean, yeah, our 2020 numbers, revenue numbers, were not even close to what we were seeing in 2019. And, that's okay. Abby and I are like, holding tough and pivoting to doing some work, like you said, outside of entertainment, looking at other people that we can help. So that's been super beneficial. But yeah, I mean, it is an accomplishment. So kudos to you and your entire team for really kind of stepping up and making big changes and big moves, because it's not easy, and it also takes a lot of caffeine. I have no doubt that you had some long nights and some early mornings trying to keep things afloat.
Yeah, and I mean, I've got a 6 and a 7-year-old. They've both been home for 13 months in Los Angeles, and it's I joke with our sound check with Shelby yesterday because she was so apologetic when her son was making some noise in the background, and I was a stay-at-home dad for the first year, like I mentioned, and so that was where this business came from, because I can do it more reliably solely from home. And so it's I don't need it's not, I don't want to say it's a sexist statement, but I feel like I see so many more women in business reaffirming the notion that they don't need to be apologetic for their family needs, especially when they're stuck at home, because we all are. At least I have been for 13 months. And I mean, Los Angeles and California, I don't know if we have a lot of guests from this area, but I still can't dine. Like as of last month, we can eat inside. And it's, so that's my example I give people to out of the state in terms of where the state is. And so that trickles down to everything like you mentioned, the music concerts, conferences, like our bread and butter, where people typically see promotional products. The other huge pivot that we saw, you talked about a guiding light, and this again goes back to every salesperson, is that you need to be solving your buyer's problems. We have a couple private colleges in the LA area who we're an approved vendor for. And so that whole process, again, all those students are remote. So it's like graduation. How do you do graduation remotely? You say, check your email for your diploma or check your mailbox, but they want to send something to, you just spent 40, 60, 80, 100 grand on whatever degree you got at one of these schools, and you get a piece of paper in the mail. Like, they wanted something else. So part of our pivot, in addition to, like, I don't want to call them PPE products, but new COVID related products, have been like fulfillment and kitting. And a lot of distributors focused on this previously, but it was always an afterthought, because most promotional products are kind of like how you guys got that mug. It's like a box shows up and there's a bunch of products of the same item in the box, as opposed to kitting, where it's like, we want a box of chocolates with our logo stamped in them, a coffee mug with our logo, a pen, the diploma rolled up, and 3, 5, 10 items, whatever number it is, and send this to this Excel file of addresses times 1,000. And so that's,
it's huge. And I feel like Mark just made such a good point, which is at the end of the day, you solve problems. That's it. Like, whether it is kitting, whether it's products, whether it's getting it where it needs to go, like, you wake up every morning and you're like, okay, Ryan, like, how are we solving problems today? I mean, like, you're the chief problem solver.
So I wanted to tell, if I have enough time, I wanted to tell one little story. So this happened last night, so it's fresh on my mind. So our typical buyer's title is an association marketing director. If you have that title, you need to know who I am if you work at this nonprofit company that I'm referring to. So these people cover multiple locations, marketing efforts for everything they order. So anything that has the logo, it has to go through this person. And so I get this, we have a pallet of, I think it's 1,400 summer camp t-shirts, which I think I had one somewhere, but these are the most expensive t-shirts this branch, this like hub is ever ordered. And it's, I think 1,400 t-shirts was 600 pounds. And I've been watching the tracking all week, and it's their first truck delivery. So we talked about this. Like, if any of you guys have gotten pallet deliveries before, you can't just walk up to the UPS store with a pallet and say, this is for you. You have to be set up like, how high is the curb outside of your building? Because this matters. So we had this whole conversation. Our buyer said, everything's good. We get pallets all the time. So I've been refreshing, and the tracking number keeps saying, out for delivery, rescheduled the next day, out for delivery. And then I get a notification at literally 9 p.m. last night saying delivered. And they're in Las Vegas. And I'm thinking, this might be a problem, because the signature just says back door. And I send this to her and I say, hey, did you guys get those t-shirts? Because this might be a problem. And then I text her in it as well as this. We've never texted before. It's always been on email, but I found her cell phone number because this is like an urgent thing. Now I'm like, I'm gonna have to drive from Los Angeles to Vegas tonight. And she's like, I think I'm gonna head down there and check, because our location's not in a great area. But long story short, all's well that ends well. But here I am texting like our buyer at 9 p.m. trying to figure out where her pallet of t-shirts are, because it's not a pallet of t-shirts. It's like 1,400 of the most expensive t-shirts she's ever gotten approval for to make. And if you saw these t-shirts, they're like an 8-color, like what we call a full color t-shirt. So,
well, and at the end of the day, it's something that's important to her. And what really matters is the customer being happy and excited and not stressed and panicked that their t-shirts are, at a back door signed off by God knows who. So, I mean, sometimes it does take, I totally feel you on that. I've had a lot of times with clients where it's, 1 a.m. and Abby and I are texting because our client is in LA. So it's only 10 p.m. for them. And I get it. It's like customer service. At the end of the day, you were super serving the customer and you were super serving your clients. And that's huge. Huge.
And your guys' experience is almost worse, because for me, like, this is a summer camp order. Summer camp doesn't start for 2 weeks for this group. So I have some buffer. But like an event type of world, if you miss the event by an hour, that product, that order, that delivery is completely useless. And
useless. We've actually had that happen before. It's quite devastating. It is quite devastating that has happened to us. So I totally hear you on that.
I mean, that's one of the things that no one ever talks about in promo is like what I call it's always abbreviated on our orders, like IH, which is in hand state. And people will, I think buyers do one of two things in my experience. They'll put the date of the event as their in hand state, which is nice in a way because it tells me what my actual deadline is. But they never factor in that they say the event is at 10 a.m. So if you ship it UPS ground and it gets there at 4:30, like that's 6.5 hours late. And then the other thing that they do is they back it up unnecessarily early, which pushes the order into rush production and then extra charges, because I can't just like drop everything and make 36 mugs and then overnight them. And so it's one of those two things. And it's again, instead of trying to, I call it kind of a gamesmanship situation where people are trying to like game their needs versus the production realities. And instead just having a conversation like, our event is at 10. We'd like to get them in 2 days before. This is why.
Exactly. It's always such a conversation. And for the record, in case anyone is thinking, we did not rush these. We did not make Ryan or anybody at Radar crazy. Shelby and I were super excited and very patient, and we were so thrilled when our box came. And I'm curious because I know Shelby and I are going to get messages after this, but if somebody would like one of these mugs, if somebody thinks that the saying, there's a good chance that this isn't coffee, is really funny and they want to laugh and have their caffeine out of something like this, what should they do?
Well, we are happy to send those to you at no charge. Don't forget about the hashtag at the bottom. It says Coffee with Kim.
Coffee with Kim. Exactly.
So our company's happy to send these out. I think we can do like 20 or 30, depending on how our numbers look. But the first 20 or 30 people that can send me their shipping address, I'd be happy to send you a Coffee with Kim cup.
So that is big, everybody. So if you haven't already checked out Ryan on LinkedIn, or maybe Ryan, should they message you on LinkedIn? Should they message you in your inbox? Where is the best place for them to be like, oh, Ryan is the best. I love this offer. I'm totally going to message him. Where should they do that?
Well, since we're using LinkedIn, I mean, a LinkedIn inbox message would be great. I just need the shipping address and just say, unless somebody else is asking me for stuff on LinkedIn, the Coffee with Kim mug. I'm also at ryan@radarpromo.com. Should be.
Exactly. I love that. This has been so much fun. I'm so happy that I actually get to use this now, because every week, for anybody who doesn't know, we were gonna do it, and then it got canceled. I had to travel, and so I was like, I can't use the mug until Ryan comes on with me. So it's been sitting there, and my fiance Fernando was like, why aren't you using the mugs? Like, I don't understand. I'm like, I have to wait for Ryan. I can't use them yet. So
like, get this box out of here.
I'm so excited because now I can use my mug, which I'm super, super, super excited about, because it's honestly, I don't know, I only have a little bit left, so I won't spill too much. But what's nice about these mugs is that it gets thinner towards the top. So when I'm walking and like usually holding 10 things, it doesn't slosh over, which is so nice.
And we, I'm a big kind of the marketing background of like features versus benefits. And, all your guests, I'm sure, are like really tied into the idea of like, is this a feature for your client or is this an actual benefit? And that aspect of that mug is something I've never heard in my entire career.
It's so awesome. So if you haven't already, guys, drop Ryan a note. But thank you to you, Ryan, and your entire Radar Promotions team. You guys are so freaking fabulous. And if anybody needs promotional stuff or needs services, whether it's masks or crayons or mugs or whatever, send Ryan a note because he will totally hook you up and problem solve with you to figure out what is going to be best for you.
And I saw one question that Shelby posted from Richard about shipping internationally. I'm gonna what's aside from what you taught us about saying no, I'm going to avoid that recommendation and I'm going to just say yes and I'll figure it out. So Richard, just send all your postal code and information and we'll figure that out.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you, Ryan. So appreciate it. And everybody go connect with Ryan on LinkedIn and don't forget to write down his email address. So thank you. And then we're already up, like the hour already flew by. Holy freaking moly, that was crazy. So I'm gonna take my mug. I am gonna go refill it now, but I hope that you have a brilliant rest of the week. 2 action items. 1, give yourself a little pat on the back for trading so many great recommendations with me and everybody else. Jen, I know you missed a bunch of the book ones, so you're gonna have to scroll back up or maybe we'll take some notes and shoot them over to you. And number 2, if you haven't already, subscribe to my What Works newsletter. And also, I know I mentioned earlier, but you can always give me a follow over on Instagram. I post a lot more life stuff that I think is funny and entertaining that I don't totally feel like is appropriate for LinkedIn. So if you don't already, give me a little follow over on Instagram and shoot me a message so that we can chat on that platform as well. But have a brilliant rest of the week. Thank you. And I will see you next Wednesday.